or had emigrated to better quarters, and in their stead appeared gloves, bands, scarves, hairpins, and many other little devices, almost as ingenious in their way as rats and mice themselves for the tantalisation of mankind. About and among them all moved Kate herself, not the least beautiful or unwonted relief to the stern old gloomy building. In good time, or in bad time, as the reader likes to take it, for Mrs. Nickleby's impatience went a great deal faster than the clocks at that end of the town, and Kate was dressed to the very last hairpin a full hour and a half before it was at all necessary to begin to think about it. In good time or in bad time the toilet was completed, and it being at length the hour agreed upon for starting, the milkman fetched a coach from the nearest stand, and Kate, with many adieus to her mother, and many kind messages to Miss La Creevy, who was to come to tea, seated herself in it, and went away in state, if ever anybody went away in state in a hackney coach yet. And the coach, and the coachman, and the horses rattled and jangled, and whipped, and cursed, and swore, and tumbled on together, until they came to Golden Square. The coachman gave a tremendous double knock at the door, which was opened long before he had done, as quickly as if there had been a man behind it with his hand tied to the latch. Kate, who had expected no more uncommon appearance than Newman Noggs in a clean shirt, was not a little astonished to see that the opener was a man in handsome livery, and that there were 2 or 3 others in the hall. There was no doubt about its being the right house, however, for there was the name upon the door. So she accepted the laced coat sleeve which was tendered her, and entering the house was ushered upstairs into a back drawing room, where she was left alone. If she had been surprised at the apparition of the footman, she was perfectly absorbed in amazement at the richness and splendour of the furniture. The softest and most elegant carpets, the most exquisite pictures, the costliest mirrors, articles of richest ornament, quite dazzling from their beauty and perplexing from the prodigality with which they were scattered around, encountered her on every side. The very staircase nearly down to the hall door was crammed with beautiful and luxurious things, as though the house were brimful of riches, which, with a very trifling addition, would fairly run over into the street. Presently she heard a series of loud double knocks at the street door, and after every knock some new voice in the next room. The tones of Mr. Ralph Nickleby were easily distinguishable at first, but by degrees they merged into the general buzz of conversation, and all she could ascertain was, that there were several gentlemen with no very musical voices, who talked very loud, laughed very heartily, and swore more than she would have thought quite necessary, but this was a question of taste. At length the door opened, and Ralph himself, divested of his boots, and ceremoniously embellished with black silks and shoes, presented his crafty face. "I couldn't see you before, my dear," he said, in a low tone, and pointing as he spoke to the next room. "I was engaged in receiving them. Now, shall I take you in?" "Pray, uncle," said Kate, a little flurried, as people much more conversant with society often are when they are about to enter a room full of strangers, and have had time to think of it previously. "Are there any ladies here?" "No," said Ralph shortly. "I don't know any." "Must I go in immediately?" asked Kate, drawing back a little. "As you please," said Ralph, shrugging his shoulders. "They are all come, and dinner will be announced directly afterwards, that's all." Kate would have entreated a few minutes' respite, but, reflecting that her uncle might consider the payment of the hackney coach fare a sort of bargain for her punctuality, she suffered him to draw her arm through his, and to lead her away. 7 or 8 gentlemen were standing round the fire when they went in, and, as they were talking very loud, were not aware of their entrance, until Mr. Ralph Nickleby, touching one on the coat sleeve, said in a harsh emphatic voice, as if to attract general attention, "Lord Frederick Verisopht, my niece, Miss Nickleby." The group dispersed as if in great surprise, and the gentleman addressed, turning round, exhibited a suit of clothes of the most superlative cut, a pair of whiskers of similar quality, a moustache, a head of hair, and a young face. "Eh?" said the gentleman. What the devil!" With which broken ejaculations he fixed his glass in his eye, and stared at Miss Nickleby in great surprise. "My niece, my lord," said Ralph. "Then my ears did not deceive me, and it's not wax work," said his lordship. "How d'ye do? I'm very happy." And then his lordship turned to another superlative gentleman, something older, something stouter, something redder in the face, and something longer upon town, and said in a loud whisper that the girl was deyvlish pitty. "Introduce me, Nickleby," said this second gentleman, who was lounging with his back to the fire and both elbows on the chimney-piece. "Sir Mulberry Hawk," said Ralph. "Otherwise, the most knowing card in the park, Miss Nickleby," said Lord Frederick Verisopht. "Don't leave me out, Nickleby," cried a sharp-faced gentleman who was sitting on a low chair with a high back, reading the paper. "Mr. Pyke," said Ralph. "Nor me, Nickleby," cried a gentleman with a flushed face and a flash air, from the elbow of Sir Mulberry Hawk. "Mr. Pluck," said Ralph. Then, wheeling about again towards a gentleman with the neck of a stork and the legs of no animal in particular, Ralph introduced him as the Honourable Mr. Snobb, and a white-headed person at the table as Colonel Chowser. The colonel was in conversation with somebody who appeared to be a make-weight, and was not introduced at all. There were two circumstances which, in this early stage of the party, struck home to Kate's bosom, and brought the blood tingling to her face. One was the flippant contempt with which the guests evidently regarded her uncle, and the other the easy insolence of their manner towards herself. That the first symptom was very likely to lead to the aggravation of the second, it needed no great penetration to foresee. And here Mr. Ralph Nickleby had reckoned without his host, for however fresh from the country a young lady by nature may be, and however unacquainted with conventional behaviour, the chances are that she will have quite as strong an innate sense of the decencies and proprieties of life as if she had run the gauntlet of a dozen London seasons, possibly a stronger one, for such senses have been known to blunt in this improving process. When Ralph had completed the ceremonial of introduction, he led his blushing niece to a seat. As he did so, he glanced warily round, as though to assure himself of the impression which her unlooked-for appearance had created. "An unexpected pleasure, Nickleby," said Lord Frederick Verisopht, taking his glass out of his right eye, where it had until now done duty on Kate, and fixing it in his left to bring it to bear on Ralph. "Designed to surprise you, Lord Frederick," said Mr. Pluck. "Not a bad idea," said his lordship, "and one that would almost warrant the addition of an extra 2.5%. "Nickleby," said Sir Mulberry Hawk, in a thick, coarse voice, "take the hint, and tack it on to the other 25, or whatever it is, and give me half for the advice." Sir Mulberry garnished this speech with a hoarse laugh, and terminated it with a pleasant oath regarding Mr. Nickleby's limbs, whereat Messrs. Pyke and Pluck laughed consumedly. These gentlemen had not yet quite recovered the jest, when dinner was announced, and then they were thrown into fresh ecstasies by a similar cause, for Sir Mulberry Hawk, in an excess of humour, shot dexterously past Lord Frederick Verisopht, who was about to lead Kate downstairs, and drew her arm through his up to the elbow. "No, damn it, Verisopht," said Sir Mulberry, "fair play's a jewel, and Miss Nickleby and I settled the matter with our eyes 10 minutes ago." "Ha, ha, ha!" laughed the Honourable Mr. Snobb. "Very good, very good." Rendered additionally witty by this applause, Sir Mulberry Hawk leered upon his friends most facetiously, and led Kate downstairs with an air of familiarity which roused in her gentle breast such burning indignation as she felt it almost impossible to repress. Nor was the intensity of these feelings at all diminished when she found herself placed at the top of the table, with Sir Mulberry Hawk and Lord Frederick Verisopht on either side. "Oh, you've found your way into our neighbourhood, have you?" said Sir Mulberry, as his lordship sat down. "Of course," replied Lord Frederick, fixing his eyes on Miss Nickleby. 'How can you